Welcome, everyone. I am out of breath, but I'm also Kathleen McMahon, and I'm here today to show you how we rolled out a product rebrand in secret using feature flags. But before we begin, let's get some details out of the way. Yes, I have the right button. Okay, so my presentation will be posted on Noticed later today. That's https://noti.st/resource11. You could also follow me at Resource11 on Twitter, Instagram, and GitHub. Let's back up a bit so I can introduce myself a little bit better. So I'm an engineer, and I'm a designer, and I like to speak about things, and I race cyclocross very badly. Mostly you will see me racing in costume, doing 2 laps to your 6 laps at the back of a pack on a single speed with a bunch of onlookers laughing and toasting me with their beverage. Now, I think y'all agree these past couple of years have been intense. Whew. Now, let's get that out of our system. So, see that penguin in the middle of the screen, sort of to the right? The one who failed? That was me, burning out in these past few years. So I took a sabbatical these past few months, and similar to what I was doing in lockdown, I spent my time getting crafty with lighting setups in my office, photographing my cats Thor and Otis, who seem to always be fighting. It's a problem. But Otis is especially needy. See, during lockdown, before my burnout hit peak, I also started a heck of a crystal collection and attempted to get good photos. But Otis was having none of that. None of it at all. He has needs. So, but who couldn't resist him? He's the reason why I chose that walk-on song. Every time I'd play it, he'd jump up on his cat tree and look at me, expecting a salsa dance. So he did, and now we still do. He has needs. Anyhow, when it was time to head to React Miami to see people in person, I felt so excited. People, finally. And then I remembered, oh my God, talking to people. How many of you felt the same? Yeah, a few of you forgot. Me too. My introvert did a little bit of a panic, but then excitement went out, y'all. But you're here to learn about secret rebrands. So I'm going to tell you a story about how we did that. Before my sabbatical, I was on the UX Next team at LaunchDarkly. That team's work enabled other designers and engineers to craft high-quality experiences for their customers. When I first joined there, part of that work included maturing the design system. And I'm a super fan of design systems. So it was exciting work. And if you've ever worked on a design system, you know there are a lot of things to consider, which can sometimes feel like herding kittens, always fun, yet a lot of moving parts. But similar to herding kittens, maturing a great design system can be tough. If your squad is small, if your squad is not a dedicated team, you have to be very strategic and choose what to tackle. For example, the foundations were missing in our design systems. We didn't have fonts set up, icons optimized, design tokens fleshed out, any of that. We had components, but none of the other building blocks. So we began our journey to define them. And naturally, we were just beginning to start redefining our design tokens when, in an unexpected twist, someone kicked into the door wearing a big bird costume. Apparently it's not clicking. There it is. Not really. The creative team entered the scene and announced a brand refresh. So there we are, presented with an updated brand North Star. You may ask, what is a brand North Star? Well, there's this article by M81 Creative that gives a great explanation of a North Star. Your brand's North Star is the promise you are making to your customers. At LaunchDarkly, the North Star aligns with their core message. Software powers the world. LaunchDarkly empowers all teams to deliver and control their software. They lean into this mission with their colors, typography, and a signature logo. Now, creating a North Star takes time to do right, to be fair. You have to do things like strategy, competitive analysis, user and customer insights, and creative explorations. This process can take many months, sometimes up to a year. And once that is done, you will have some key outputs like logos, colors, typography, and such, foundations. Now, once that North Star is established, it's time for teams to go to work to roll these brand visuals into the marketing site and the product app. This is where it gets tricky. While our team was informed about the brand refresh at the earliest possible moment, we had one wrinkle, and it's a big one. The time to customer rollout was 13 weeks. And it was a secret project for most of the company. Woo! That meant the time to internal rollout to our teams was 10 weeks. So we had to carefully pivot. I love Ross. We had to carefully pivot like Ross, trying to move that sofa around the corner to figure out how to get things done. Since typically visual refreshes happen more often on the marketing side. And visual refreshes happen less often on the product app because a rebrand impacts established product roadmaps. And you need to be careful when the visuals between your marketing site and your product app get out of sync. First, because your product app will start looking outdated. And second, that outdated app visuals will break your brand promise, and you will lose trust from your customers. So our team regrouped and thought, how can we get this done? Mars baby cat, follow Mars baby cat. And how can we do this without making any questionable decisions that may impact the product, because you don't want to be making questionable decisions like, I don't know, making dishes that include Jell-O and shellfish? It's just not a good look. Fun fact, I find a way to get this slide into every single presentation I do. Every single one. But then, back to the story, our team had an idea. Why not use our own product to roll out a rebrand? Feature flags. That means that we could set up a flagging structure and rebrand in stealth mode. We could make all of our changes alongside other teams, not disrupt other squads' roadmaps, and make our changes all while all the other squads were not aware that the product brand refresh was actually happening. So what flags did we use in this case? Well, we used 3 types of flags: Boolean, Prerequisite, and Multivariate flags. We then used those flags to control theming, data attributes, fonts, design tokens, HTML templates, and various UI updates. And since we had to do it all in 10 weeks, in secret, we used this one ring, one flag as the basis of most of our changes. And the flag that all our other flags were dependent upon was the Enable 2021 Rebrand flag. And this flag was a prerequisite flag for other flags. What this means is prerequisite flags are great for testing out additional features in isolation. This means you can have all your sub-flags turned on, but unless that prerequisite flag is on, the other flags won't work. A prerequisite flag allowed us to test individual features in various combinations without impacting the rest of the app. And because this was a secret project, we could target our stakeholders with these flags so we could share a preview of our work. Now, once this flag was on, we could continue working on things like theming support using data attributes to control whichever theme we wanted to serve up. But we also wanted to use our new font family, Inter, which was a beautiful variable font. And we were going to use that in our visual refresh. So we added the enable enter flag as with the rebrand flag as a prerequisite. And now that we set that flag up, we could add another data attribute into our set, and we could test our fonts out independently within our rebranded theme and see if everything works. Then we paired those data attributes with React context and hooks to create a theme context and a theme provider that we could use anywhere we needed in the app. We created a custom use theme function for wherever we wanted to use our theme and used our theme provider in the app entry point. So we could leverage our rebrand flag value to set the theme, and we could pass the theme into the provider. And we'd use effect hooks to set data attributes in the root element of our app. Now that app theming was scaffolded, we could continue work on design tokens. So, like I mentioned before, when the North Star was revealed, our team was already refactoring our token architecture. Once this rebrand was announced, we had to adjust our tokens work without losing any of our progress. And we didn't have much time to automate the process with Style Dictionary. If you've never heard of design tokens, Sunka Road tweeted a great definition. Design tokens are an abstraction of everything impacting the visual design of an app or platform. In other words, design tokens are design decisions propagated through a system. So we had to do a lot of exploration work. Now, design tokens span 3 categories. You have base tokens, semantic tokens, and component tokens. Base tokens are the raw values. Semantic tokens are aliased to base values, and they can be shared across the application. Component tokens are scoped at the component level, and they can be aliased to semantic tokens and base tokens, and it makes everything nice and scalable. Now, our legacy token system, when we started auditing, was a blend of base and semantic tokens all in one. So it wasn't scalable, especially with the naming conventions we used. It didn't make sense to have a color name in a semantic token if our primary color changed. Our primary color changed to blue, so how does green make sense here? It doesn't. So that's why we refactored. And considering our short time frame, the tokens we were most concerned about were our application level tokens, because those were used heavily. We chose to focus on using a data attribute and targeting it in CSS to map our application level tokens to base tokens in either the legacy or our rebrand theme, which we called Osmo. Since our theme was controlled by a flag, we could target that data attribute right in CSS and change the values by adjusting the data attribute. We used this one-to-one mapping of our values and tested our rebrand by toggling on our flag. This was especially helpful because we could introduce a new set of semantic tokens quickly without much fuss and make changes quickly. Now we could have a separate set of base tokens and create a new set of application level tokens and change values by adjusting the data attribute. And by leveraging those data attributes through feature flagging, we could test these 2 new token values in the app at runtime without impacting all the other teams, including remapping tokens for our new font family. We could test and adjust values quickly, because with fonts, you might have different, the size of they've called an X height in a font. It's like the size of a lowercase letter. And different fonts have different X heights, and you want to be sure that you are making adjustments when you see things on the screen. And we got to set up some component level tokens to theme and streamline our CSS. And what's even better here is we could use a data attribute to wrap blocks of code in our CSS for each component. And when it's time to remove legacy styles, we just remove a block of code. So we're not hunting and pecking everywhere for things. We also used flags in other ways for performance optimizations. So in our HTML templates, we used the LaunchDarkly Go SDK and Go templates on the back end to bootstrap our flag data into our HTML templates. And this is for Ryan, Magoo. This would give us just enough information to render our pages. And we could use that rebrand feature flag to set the data theme attribute as that performance optimization, and the HTML template could check for this flag and render the correct theme while we wait for the JavaScript to load and initialize the HTML. And we will avoid the flash of not unstyled, but incorrectly styled content. We also use the inter font flag value to preload our variable font only if the flag was on. This way our app performance wouldn't take a hit from loading any unnecessary fonts if that flag was off. For UI updates, we use feature flags to control whether we would show or hide content on the left nav. For example, if our rebrand flag was off, the legacy theme would be true. And we'd show icons on the left nav. That way, users would have that expected legacy UI experience while we worked on the rebranded nav in secret. Top nav. There wasn't a top nav in the legacy UI, and now there is one. We added a top bar spike flag and used the rebrand flag as a prerequisite. So we could add that top nav into the UI, turn on that flag, and since it was dependent on the rebrand flag, we could test in isolation. So I learned a lot about LaunchDarkly when I worked there, because before this I'm like, if, cool. But now it's like, oh, well, when you make a project at LaunchDarkly, when you make a new one, you get two default environments, production and test. And they are set to specific colors by default. And some people like to color code their production environments for their projects, just for reasons. But we also wanted to test new default environment colors in here to see if we could make some changes. So we created another flag for environment colors and made it a multivariate flag. And we could use, with a multivariate flag, we could use blocks of JSON in our variations to test out color combinations on the fly and use Go to store the values. Lastly, favicons. It's always a nice touch to have your favicons ready to go when you roll out your rebrand, rather than scrambling to update anything at the last moment, especially if you're using different favicons in more than one environment. So by adding a favicons flag, also another multivariate flag, we could use strings as variations and serve out whichever favicon version we needed, depending on the environment in our HTML template. Okay, well that was a lot. So to wrap up, with the power of feature flags in a 10-week time frame, we implemented a substantial amount of changes to a product app and rolled out a product rebrand in stealth mode. Thank you.